Today we're working on a 2006 Mazda 3 with the 2.3 liter engine, and we are going to be servicing and replacing the front brakes, rotors, and pads. Welcome back to the Moose Mobile Auto Repair channel, and so let's get started now on the front brakes. So the first thing you need to do is to pull off the wheel. This one is a 21 millimeter. So now you want to turn this all the way so that we're able to work on the brakes. Just make sure that the key is in the ignition so it doesn't go to steering lock. And so now we are going to get started. So the first thing you need to take off is the protective cap for the top and the bottom. So what I'm going to do now is to remove the spring clip. So usually I just use a pry bar, or you can use a long flathead screwdriver to get this off. And I hold down on the spring so that it doesn't fly off and hit you in the face. So I'm just going to use a flathead screwdriver and to hold down with a channel locks pliers, get this off, and then it just comes out. We are probably not going to reuse this if there is a new one that comes with a set of brake pads. Usually a new clip. It normally comes with the new brake pads. And I forgot to mention that we are working on the driver's side. So now we are just going to use a 7 millimeter hex or Allen key and just insert it in there. And I'm just using a half extension, a 3/8 drive, and a 3/8 ratchet. So you want to loosen it up until it's loosened all the way down. And then you just have to do the same for the bottom. And what you can do is after it's loosened all the way, you just use a screwdriver to push the pins out. And just be careful to not damage the threads. Do the same for the bottom as well. And then now you should just be able to get the caliper out. To put the caliper here. And now it's a good time to inspect the brake hose and everything. See if there's any cracks or if it's a split. So we're just going to remove the pad now and just push out. And you should be able to get the pads out. The customer was complaining that the vehicle is not stopping very well. So there's only a little bit of friction material left, probably like 4 millimeters, but the customer is complaining that the vehicle is not stopping all that well. Now, before you continue any further, you want to make sure that you have the correct brake pads. Just make sure that everything is the same. I notice on the new pads it has a directional arrow on which way you need to install them. So just make sure you install them properly. But this pad, it only goes on one way. These pads are directional, so you can see that there's a difference. I believe this arrow is supposed to be pointing towards the front of the vehicle, so you need to make sure that you install it on the correct side. I don't think it's going to matter on which side you put them on. I just see the opening here and here. I don't see any like difference like physically, but try to install it in the correct orientation. So now you just want to check the calipers to see if there's any leakage inside, to see if there's any traces of brake fluid. If there's any traces of brake fluid, that would mean that the calipers are leaking, and you would need to replace them or rebuild them. So I'm not seeing any brake fluid here. Just be careful to not mistake anything for like assembly lube or assembly grease. So you need to be careful. I don't see any traces of brake fluid. So we are going to push the piston in, and before you do that, you want to check the brake fluid reservoir. If you need to take some fluid out, and then take some fluid out, because when you push the piston in, the brake fluid is going to rise in the reservoir. So if you need to take brake fluid out, take out some fluid and then push the piston in. So I'm just using a special tool to push the piston in. You can use like a C-clamp or something, or channel locks. It doesn't really matter. Just push it in slowly until it goes in all the way. And that's it. I believe that's all the way in. Just want to double check just to make sure. So I'm just doing the driver's side at the moment, and you can see that the brake fluid level is all the way up. So when I do the passenger side, I will need to take some of the brake fluid out. You can use like a turkey baster or something, or a syringe, in order to get the brake fluid out. But I use like a special extractor tool to suck the fluid out. I use an extractor tool that's like this. So I just use this to suck the fluid out. So now we're just going to take the pins out and clean them up afterwards. Now there are some things that I know that some guys don't do, or shops, is to remove the rubber bushings so you can clean the inside. So I just use like a medium width flathead screwdriver. So I push down carefully, and I push out in order to get the bushings out, so I can clean the rust inside. Because I'll show you on what I mean after I get this out. You just need to be careful to not damage anything. As you are pushing, out, you should be able to get the bushing out. You can pull back on this afterwards. So this piece, you can see the rust. So we are just going to clean that off. And in some cases, if the bushing is really bad and split, then you will need to replace them. You can see the rust inside the bore. So we are going to clean that, because the issue is that over time that rust will accumulate inside here, and then it will the rust will accumulate on the rubber, and then that's going to make the slider pin very difficult to move over time. So these pins will not be able to slide inside there. So you want to make sure that you clean the rust out of here. For now, we are just going to be disassembling everything, and then later I'm going to show you on how to service them. So we're gonna do the same for the other side. You just need to be extremely careful to not rip or tear the boot. I'm just trying to push back on the rubber so that it'll be easier to get out. So we are just going to set the caliper on the side here. Just make sure you don't hang it up by the brake hose. If you want, you can hang it up on the strut tower. You can use like a metal hook or coat hangers or something. So now we're just going to remove the mounting bolts for the caliper. They are 17 each. You can use like a long wrench or breaker bar or an impact if you want to speed things up. And so now, as soon as you have the caliper bracket out, you can take off the rotor. You may need to use a hammer if the rotor does not come off easily. I know that on the original Mazda brake rotors, at the first brake replacement, I know that the brake rotors are extremely difficult to take off. So that will take some time to get the rotors off. I've worked on many Mazdas in my career so far, and so I know that these generation Mazda, like Mazda 3 and 5, the brake rotors are completely seized and stuck onto the hub. So there are a few ways and tricks to get them off, but I'm not going to be talking into the details about that today. So the next thing you want to do is to double check your parts, make sure that they are the same size. I just found out that these are not the same size. So I will have to go in to get the correct rotor size. So usually you should check your parts as soon as possible. You want to make sure you have the correct parts. So usually when I have the wrong rotor size, I like to take the measurements. I use like something that's like this to measure drums and stuff. So I just go here. This is a smaller rotor size, is 270. This is a 278 millimeter diameter rotor size. So the other one was too large. I didn't take the measurements of that, but the ones that I need are the smaller ones. So I don't know if this is like the S model or the I model, so I haven't confirmed that. So I'm gonna go and get the correct rotor size. So you can see here on the numbers, it's close to 277, 278. I saw in the options it's a 278 millimeter rotor size. There are some vehicles you need to watch out because they have like 8 or 10 different options sometimes. So you want to make sure that you have the correct size. So now as we are waiting for the correct rotors to come, I'm just going to spray some of the Permatex disc brake quiet. This is like some sort of a dampening adhesive. So this just it helps prevent something called caliper hopping and excess movement in the caliper. Is just those things that that shops they like to use just for like cheap insurance, because on some problem vehicles they are susceptible to brake noise. So a lot of shops and people like myself, we like to use this on pretty much every brake job. It's not something that you absolutely have to use, but it's something that shops they like to use to prevent any comebacks and to prevent any brake noise. And so because the issue is the shops don't have time to have a comeback, so they use this just in case. So I'm just gonna spray some on the backing of the pads. So you just need a you don't need to spray it too much, but just enough. And then we are going to let this dry up for like 5 minutes or so. By the time we are done the servicing, then it will be time to install the pads, and all of this it would have dried up already. So this stuff says here It fills microscopic thickness variations and dampens vibration between the caliper and brake pad interface. It resists washout in high temperatures. Then it says stops brake squeal by dampening vibration between the caliper and the brake pad. Allows for easy disassembly by preventing rust formation between caliper and brake pad. Compatible with anti-lock brake systems, ABS. So that's what this product does. And no, I'm not a sponsor, so I'm just showing this because I typically use this on pretty much every brake job. So we are gonna wait for this to dry up, and we are going to start servicing. So we are just going to clean up the surface on the hub. You can use a wire brush sandpaper. I'm using a die grinder with a 3-inch Rolock wheel. This is a brown sanding disc, so it's not as coarse. So now I'm just going to do the rest of the cleaning. So now I'm just going to clean the inside of the caliper here. Now we are going to clean the pins. I'm just using a wire wheel. I have the air compressor. It's still running in the background, so I'm using a wire wheel. If you don't have this, you can use like a wire brush or something to clean it off with. If you don't have all the fancy tools. Now we are going to clean the caliper bolts. Now it's going to be dependent on how much rust there is on the brakes. So it really depends it really depends in your area on the climate conditions, where the vehicle is driven and stored. So it's going to be dependent on how much cleaning you will need to do. On some vehicles, you don't need to do as much cleaning, and other vehicles you'll have to do a lot of cleaning. So this vehicle has been serviced previously in the past, and so there isn't as much cleaning. So it's going again is going to be dependent on how much like rust and stuff there is, and if the vehicle has been serviced prior or not. So now we're just going to clean the contact points on the caliper to clean any rust. So I'm just going to use the sanding disc. If there's not that much rust, then you don't need to clean as much. So you just want to be careful to not sand down too much. You also want to clean here on where the spring clip is going to contact. And again, you don't want to get to like the straight bare metal. You want to clean off the rust, and then that's it. You don't want to grind too much down, otherwise that's going to cause problems. I know that the sanding disc is bouncing around a little bit. I think that should be okay. Okay, we're good now. If you want to, you can also go through. You can go through this with a wire brush after you're done, just to make sure that all of the dirt is cleaned off. So you can use a wire brush that's like this to clean everything off. If you don't have the fancy tools. You can also clean off the area here if there's any corrosion or rust on the bracket, and we're all good to go now. So now I'm going to be using a metal carbide bit. I removed the roll-lock attachment from my Milwaukee die grinder, so I just use this to clean the bore on the caliper bracket, to clean all of the rust. So that's what we are going to do now. So you want to be careful because this has the capability to grind a lot of the metal off. So either you can use this, or you can use a small sheet of sandpaper and roll it up and to get inside there to clean the rust. So I'm just going to carefully to clean the rust out. You just want to go at a very slow speed. You can see all of the rust coming out of there. So this is why it's very important to clean this. I'm just going at a very, very slow speed so that I don't damage anything. Just enough to get it somewhat shiny. Don't need to clean too much. I think that should be okay, and we are just going to wash it down after with the brake cleaner. So we are going to do the same for the other side. We are going to do the same on the bushings carefully. You want to clean all of the rust. You can reuse these if they are relatively okay, or you can clean them up. So if there isn't anything like wrong with them, then it's okay to reuse them. So I have everything all cleaned up. You won't get every little speck of rust off, but as long as you get the majority of it off, you should be fine. The inside should be okay. There's no need to clean that. You can wash it out with brake cleaner afterwards and just let it air dry. Just do the same for the other one. So we're just going to wash everything down now with brake cleaner to get all of the rust off. You don't need to clean every single speck of rust inside the bore on where the bushings go, but as long as you have pretty much the majority of it off. And then later we are going to lubricate them after we are done. I'm still waiting on the rotors, so when the rotors show up, hopefully they bring me the correct size. I'm just gonna clean the hub here and there. I just wanted to say there's no right or wrong answer when you are doing brake service, but as long as it's serviced properly, then you won't have any issues. So we're gonna wash out the bushings with brake cleaner just to get all of the dirt, the crud out. Probably wash down the caliper too. You don't have to wash it all down, but if you take care of the customer will take care of you, and that's just the basis of how things go, right? So this is all dried up. We'll put some anti-seize here. You can spray like fluid film or white grease or on whatever you want. It doesn't really matter as long as you have some like rust proofing stuff in here, so that the hub does not rust, and so the brake rotor does not seize on there. So now we'll apply some anti-seize on the hub. You need to apply a generous amount, but you don't want to apply too much, because if you apply too little, then the anti-seize is not really going to do anything. So if you put a very thin coat or layer, that won't do much. You gotta make sure you put a thick enough layer of anti-seize, and that's how you know, because I was the last one to service the brakes on this last, and so you can see that the rotor came off quite easy. And then later we're going to clean off the excess anti-seize on the wheel studs. You don't want to get any anti-seize on the studs here. And then now we're probably, we're probably going to use the green stuff, the caliper lube. I have the green and the orange stuff that I usually use. I typically don't use this on everything, just on the contact points, because I've heard and have had problems using these on slider pins, but everybody else, they may have a different experience, so who can decide on what you want to do. You can either use this on everything or use this on everything, but I just like to use both these days. This is high temperature, so I just put this on like the contact points, and this I put on the slider pins and stuff. So now we are going to lubricate the caliper. After it dried up, we're going to put some lubricant on the in the bore on where the bushings go. So you're going to put some lubricant in here so that we're able to slide the bushings in easily and to prevent rust buildup inside. You don't need to put a shitload of caliper lube, just a sufficient amount, and you should be good. Put some lubricant on the outside. And we're going to put some on the inside as well. I think that should be okay. So we're going to reinstall these now. You will need to squeeze these in order to get them inside. So typically there's a way to do it. Squeeze them as you try to get it in. It shouldn't be able to slide in easy. And once you get it in, you should be able to turn this easily. See how that turns? You can just wipe off the excess here. And that's how you know it's in properly and you're doing it properly. So do the same on the other one. And the same story here. Just the same thing. Repeating the procedure. Should be able to turn this after. Make sure it's in all the way to wipe off the excess. And then you're good. And to lubricate the pins. You can put some on the threads too if you want. It's not too big of a deal. These pins don't require too much grease. just enough grease so that it's able to slick and to slide properly. Make sure the pins can slide in and out, and then you should be good now. So now we're going to lubricate the contact points and using the orange stuff. This is the high temperature stuff. So you lubricate the contact points. And once again, you don't need to apply a shitload of lubricant. Just a normal amount on whatever your normal is. Just a tad bit here and there. Some on the back, because this is where the spring clip is going to slide on after. Then later we can wipe down the excess afterwards so it doesn't get on the brake pads. So I'm still waiting for the brake rotors to show up. Meanwhile, the pads have dried up. So there are two of the inboard pads here. I'm just comparing them side to side. I believe that the arrow is pointing to the left or to the front is the correct one to install on this side. If you're installing the right side, it will be pointing to the right. So you must install the right on the right side, the left pointing to the left on the left side. When you install them, I believe they will be installed like this, and when you turn the caliper down, the pads will be pointing in the upwards position. So it will be seated in this way, and the arrow will be pointing up. So that's the correct way to install these. They do this for specific reasons. I believe for noise and vibration problems. So they design the brake pad a specific way. So that's all there is to it. Some pads are directional and some are not. You just have to be careful. The previous pads I put on this vehicle, it did not have the direction for the arrow. I don't know if it's going to matter too much, to be honest. So this one is I'm going to be installing this one on the driver's side, so it's pointing to the left. So this is the left side, driver's side, so we are going to put this here. So the outboard pad is the same, so it does not matter on what side you put it on. So we are going to install this now. Usually, and what I like to do, I like to put a little bit of the lubricant inside the clips to lubricate it. So it will make it easier to install it inside the caliper piston bore. So we're gonna lubricate the contact points a little bit. I may have put a tad bit too much. Don't think it's gonna be a big deal. So we're gonna install this here now. So the way you want to install this, you turn it upside down like this. I'm gonna get a little bit of grease or the caliper lube everywhere. You need to squeeze the clips. You need to line it up. You need to push firmly in order to get it in, and then it goes in. I'm just going to wipe down my hands. I got some grease on myself as I got this in. So these pads are in, so I'm still waiting on the brake rotors to show up, and then we will continue. If by any chance you accidentally got any grease on the friction material, it's not a big deal. You can spray some brake cleaner on a clean shop towel or something, and to wipe down any grease that may have gotten onto the friction material. So now I got the correct brake rotors. So just going to use the old one as a reference. So we're gonna open this up. Making sure everything is good. Everything it lines up. So anyhow, we're just gonna spray some brake cleaner on these rotors. These are coated rotors. So on some of the rotors, it may say to not spray brake cleaner, but I spray brake cleaner anyways, just to be on the safe side. So the reason why you need to clean the brake rotors is because during the shipment and packaging and stuff, the manufacturers, they apply a special type of oil or anti-rust coating on the brake rotors so that the rotors do not rust during a shipment. And so a lot of times there will be some of the residual oils that is left on the brake rotors. So you don't want to get those residual oils onto the brake pads, because it will contaminate the friction material on the brake pad. So you want to make sure you clean the brake rotors well with brake cleaner. So we are ready to install the rotor. And what I like to do, I like to use an old axle nut and a lug nut that came off the vehicle, so that I can tighten up the rotor. So that way I will not be fighting against the caliper bracket and stuff. There's a problem with the lug nut here. So yeah, so I tighten it down so that I don't have to fight against the brake caliper when I'm doing the installation and the brake pads as well. So now we're going to install the caliper bracket. I already applied anti-seize on the bolts. I applied some anti-seize on the bolts. So we're just going to tighten up the bolts now. You can use like an impact wrench or something, or a breaker bar, or a wrench, or a ratchet to tighten up the bolts. I will put the torque spec on the screen for you guys to see. My torque spec is the Guten tight, the good and tight, the German method You don't want to go too tight, just until it's snug and you're good. If you go too tight, you are going to strip out the threads. So now we're going to lubricate the ears for the other brake pads or contact points. Install it over here. Should be okay. And now we just need to bring the caliper back and install the caliper. Make sure you don't twist the brake hose here. Just make sure when you get the caliper in that the pads they line up in between. So now what I like to do is to get the slider pins to line up all the way, I push it in, make sure it's in the threads all the way, because you don't want to cross thread these, and do the same for the bottom. Now you just need to tighten it up. Make sure you don't cross thread these, and just do it by hand. You should be able to get it in there. So as soon as it stops, you stop, and then you need to do the same for the bottom. Don't tighten them down all the way yet. So you want to tighten down the bottom one now, the same way as the top. And then it stops. Once it stops, then you're good. And then you can tighten it down just a tiny bit more. I will put the torque spec on the screen for you guys to see. You don't need to tighten these down too much, just a little bit until it's snug. And then once you're done, you can replace the two caps after that. So once it's tight, you can replace the two caps. One here and one here. So now we're going to install the spring clip. I just want to push back and forth just to make sure that everything is lined up correctly. And I spin the rotor, make sure everything spins and everything moves freely. You want to make sure the caliper moves back and forth. Make sure that the flex hose or the brake hose is parallel to the caliper and that it's not twisted. You want to make sure it's not twisted, because if it's twisted and you don't see that and you put everything all back together, it's very possible to have a brake failure during the road test or shortly later on. So what I'm gonna do is put a little bit of lubricant on the pins. Now we are going to install the clip now. Typically you install it here first at the same time to push it in, and then you should be all good to go. And you can use like a hammer to tap it in place just to make sure everything is in, and then you're good. And you should contact on the ends here. You're just going to tap it in place just to be sure. You can use like a drift chisel or punch just to make sure it's in all the way. And you're good. Just something flat that you can use. These clips are very important, so make sure that you don't forget to install these clips after you're done. So once you're done, you can turn the wheel back, remove the lug nut and the axle nut, and just clean the rotor again, just to make sure there's no grease or anything, because you don't want to contaminate the brake pads. So just verify and double check your work, make sure it's okay. And I'm just going to do the passenger side off camera after I'm done, and then afterwards we are going to pump the brake pedal and double check the brake fluid level after that. So I'm just going to wipe, just make sure that everything is clean and free of grease. I just like to turn the rotor, just make sure there's no grease. And you should be all good to go from here on. I'm just gonna apply a little bit of anti-seize on the brake rotor here, just on the hub. You should be all good to go now. So there is one thing that I forgot to mention, is to make sure that you don't put too much lubricant on the slider pins, because sometimes if you put too much lubricant, it can cause something called an airlock. And what that does is that an airlock prevents the circulation of fluid inside the bushing or the boot. And so what happens is that when you go for a road test, the vehicle will pull onto the one side, depending on which side has the airlock on. So if the airlock is on the left side, it will pull to the right. If it's on the right side, then it will pull to the left. But on these vehicles, it's not so common. It's more common on the ones that have the flexible boots on the outside, and where you can squeeze the boots, and sometimes you can squeeze the boots to get rid of any excess lubricant. And that way you shouldn't have any problems. If you have seen some of my previous brake job videos, I've stated pretty much almost on every brake job about this issue. It's because I've ran into this issue many years ago, eons ago, when I was learning the trade. And so you just want to make sure you don't have too much grease in the slider pins, because that's gonna cause problems. So anyhow, I'm all done the passenger side now. So we are just going to pump the brake pedal. You want to pump the brake pedal several pumps or so until you have a firm brake pedal. I'm just going to start the vehicle for now, so that way I can have a feel on what the brake pedal feels like. If for any reason that the brake pedal feels off, then do not continue. I would suggest that you double check your work. Just make sure everything looks okay and everything is serviced properly and the bolts are tight. So the brake pedal feels okay. In some instances, you may not be able to tell if the brake pedal is good until you go for a drive, unless unless the brake pedal is like if you have some other issue that's not related, like the brake pedal is going all the way to the floor or something, like it's completely obvious, and then it's not safe to drive the vehicle. But if you're in doubt and the brake pedal feels somewhat off, then pump the brakes and see if you're able to like after you have the wheels on and everything, see if you're able to move the vehicle slightly and see how the brakes feel then. On some cars, you may not be able to tell about the brake pedal feel until you get the car moving a little bit. So just try to, either if you're reversing or moving forwards, just try to go a tiny bit and see how it stops. So now I'm just going to tighten up the wheels. Then I'm going to put the torque spec on the screen for you guys to see, and then I'm going to torque the wheels after off camera, and then that's it. And then I'm going to go for a road test. So that's it. I'm just going to put the wheel on over here. I will put the torque spec for the wheels and just go from there. I still have to do the passenger side. After you're done, just make sure that you don't forget to pump the brake pedal until you have a firm pedal before you take off, because otherwise you won't have any brakes. So make sure you pump the brakes several times or so until the brake pedal is firm, and then go for a road test and confirm the repair, and then that's it. That's it for today. If you enjoyed this video and found it helpful, please don't forget to give it a like, and please consider subscribing to my channel if you're not already a subscriber, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Have a good day and take care.